Sawadee-kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our Pali Canon and English study group, and we're studying the words of the Buddha. We're in volume 13, chapters 61 through 70. And just like we do in all of our Pali Canon and English study groups, there'll be somebody who reads the chapter. I will share some teachings on that, and then I will open up to any and all questions that you might have. Whether you're in Facebook, YouTube, or in Zoom, you can ask questions by putting that into the comment section, or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any and all questions that you like. The way that we do this program is each Saturday, we go through this book series titled The Words of the Buddha, The Path to Enlightenment, Revealing the Hidden. And we're coming towards the end of this program, and we're going to be restarting from the very beginning on July 20th. You don't need to start at the very beginning of this program in order to gain the benefit of learning and growing and developing in this program. But since we are restarting, it's a helpful time to go ahead and restart or start from the very beginning if you like. The group learning program, which meets on Sundays and Wednesdays, that's the real place to get started. That's where we discuss volume 1, chapter by chapter by chapter over a 7-month period. The Pali Canon English Study Group is volumes 2 through 13, and this is a 1.5-year program where students are independently studying these books on their own and then coming to class in more of a study group fashion. So rather than me kind of teaching in a traditional fashion where I'll be talking for maybe 15, 20, or 30 minutes and then opening up the questions, this is more like a study group. So welcome to all of you, whether you're joining for the first time or you've been joining regularly. And anybody who's in Zoom that would like to volunteer to read, you're welcome to volunteer by just electronically raising your hand and then opening up your microphone, and then you can read any of the chapters. And then I will share some teachings on that, and then I'll open up to any and all questions that you might have. So even if you haven't studied these chapters, you can actually still gain some benefit from today's class. But of course, if you're studying these chapters ahead of time, you'll get a lot more benefit because you have the words of the Buddha in these chapters. You then have a reference that's going to take you back to the original in the Pali Canon. And then you have words from me that are going to help you to be able to reflect on this and integrate it into your life and actually experience beneficial results from the particular teaching that the Buddha shares. So I'll go ahead and read if nobody volunteers. Looks like Yihang is volunteering for this first chapter. If you'd like to go ahead, ma'am.
Sure. Persons who are worthy of gifts. Fifth discourse. Monks, possessing 6 qualities, a monk is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respectful salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world. What 6? The faculty of confidence, the faculty of energy, the faculty of mindfulness, the faculty of concentration, the faculty of wisdom, and with the destruction of the tenths, he has realized for himself with direct knowledge, experience in this very life, the tenthless liberation of mind, liberation by wisdom, and having entered upon it, he resides in it. Possessing these 6 qualities, a monk is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respectful salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world.
Okay, thank you, Yihang. So we've got a whole series of discourses here that we started last week, and then now we're continuing here. You can see this is the 5th discourse, where the Buddha is describing the types of individuals that it would be wise to make offerings to. Now keep in mind that there's a practice of generosity as part of this path to enlightenment, which is training your mind to eliminate craving, desire, attachment, and you're going to need to practice generosity with lots of people around you. This is the giving and sharing of more than is strictly required in any given situation without any expectation of anything in return. And you're going to need to practice that generosity with various people, whether it's your family members, your coworkers, your neighbors, people you don't even know. This helps to eliminate the stain of selfishness and the craving, desire, attachment where the mind's holding on. The mind's holding on because it's craving permanence and it's wanting things to be permanent. And now when you train your mind to let go and eliminate craving, desire, attachment, you'll eliminate the cause that's producing the discontent feelings, like the anger, sadness, frustration, and all those other discontent feelings. So you're going to need to practice a significant amount of generosity in order to help your mind to let go, along with breathing mindfulness meditation, of course. But then there's a particular type of generosity or wholesome karma that we refer to as merit. This is where you're practicing generosity in the direction of helping the teachings of the Buddha continue in the world. Because by helping the teachings of the Buddha continue in the world, you're making the teachings that are going to lead to people's enlightenment available. And this is one of the best gifts, or the best gift you could ever give to any individual, is a gift of the teachings, or sharing of the teachings, or assistance with the teachings. So by helping the continuation of the teachings of the Buddha in the world, you're helping other people get to this peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy. So this series here, the Buddha is teaching you about the types of individuals that it would be wise to make offerings to so that his teachings can continue in the world. And what he's focusing on is essentially people who are either enlightened or very close to it, because those are the individuals that are going to have the deepest amount of wisdom about the teachings and be able to lead countless other people to enlightenment. As you have all these different people out there that are enlightened and they happen to be sharing their teachings, at least some of them will be sharing the teachings of the Buddha. And then even if there's just an enlightened being in the community as a business person or a politician or a police officer or something like this, that individual is going to be functioning more wisely, which is going to help lots of people. So the Buddha here is specifically talking about generosity towards individuals who are sharing the teachings, and this is going to produce merit. And during his lifetime, it would have been the ordained practitioners. Nowadays, we have ordained practitioners, we have household practitioners who are teachers like me, and other people who are sharing the teachings. So here, the Buddha is talking about these 6 qualities of mind that you should look for in an individual before you practice generosity in terms of producing merit. Now, this isn't the only 6 qualities, because this is the 5th discourse, so there's multiple qualities that the Buddha is talking about. If you can imagine during the lifetime of a Buddha that there was a certain core group of people around the Buddha who were becoming enlightened, countless people during his lifetime, but there were people in the outer fringes who were learning and practicing his teachings. They might be shaving their head, wearing an orange robe, but they weren't really practicing them very closely. So the Buddha is encouraging you here to make offerings to people who are practicing the teachings closely, because it's those people who are best prepared to then be teachers and share the teachings with other people. So these 6 qualities that he's talking about, the first one here being confidence. Whenever he's talking about confidence, he's talking about confidence in the Buddha, the teachings, and the community. This is called the triple gem, or the triple jewel. And in order to get to even the first stage of enlightenment, let alone enlightenment itself, you would need to have confidence in the Buddha, the teachings, and the community. You wouldn't be able to get to the first stage of enlightenment without that. And that confidence is what's going to see you through all the challenges and struggles and difficulties, because while the path to enlightenment can be quite enjoyable, there are certain challenges and struggles along the way. As you're training your mind, you're going to have certain difficulties along the way. And having that confidence, that determination, the dedication and diligence, with that confidence in the Buddha, the teachings, and the community that you're part of, this will see you through those challenges and difficulties. Then there's this faculty of energy, or this quality of energy in the mind. This is referring to the enlightenment factor of energy. What the enlightenment factor of energy is where the mind is uplifted. You have this initiative, this motivation, this enthusiasm, this ambition, the willingness to do something. The opposite of the faculty of energy would be complacency, where the mind is dull or lethargic. So as you're in life in the unenlightened state and you're pursuing things with craving, desire, attachment, your mind's longing, yearning, and you're chasing after things, this is oftentimes all the unenlightened mind knows in terms of being motivated to make any particular decision, whether it's about a new degree or a new job or a boyfriend or girlfriend or any of these other decisions that you might be making. It's oftentimes based in craving, desire, attachment. So as you start eliminating that craving, desire, attachment, where your mind's not chasing so much, and that's one side of the spectrum, oftentimes what happens is you kind of swing to the other side, that you don't just come right to the middle, because the faculty of energy would be in the middle. But instead, the mind overshoots that, and it goes to this dullness, this lethargic condition, where there's this complacency and this lackluster part of the mind, because the mind is now swung from this craving where you're chasing things based in craving, desire, attachment, to now it swings all the way to the other side because it's not in the middle yet. So you need to realize that, and you need to arise this enlightenment factor of energy, or this faculty of energy, where you have a willingness to do something, that you have ambition and enthusiasm. And that'll bring the mind to the middle, where you can gradually make wise decisions to pursue certain goals, objectives, or interests. Then there's this faculty of mindfulness, or this quality of mind of mindfulness. This is from the Eightfold Path and also the 7 factors of enlightenment, where the Buddha teaches right mindfulness, which starts out with awareness of mind, and then more deeply, the 4 foundations of mindfulness, where you're understanding and being able to be aware of the bodily sensations associated with discontentedness arising. You're aware of the feelings in the mind, any condition of the mind, or mental objects. These are the 4 foundations of mindfulness. So somebody who you're interested in making offerings to should have the confidence, should have energy, this enthusiasm, this mindfulness or awareness of mind, as well as this concentration. Concentration is focus and clarity, being able to be focused and have a clear mind. So if somebody was just rambling on and on and on and on, and they're jumping around from topic to topic to topic, this is the unconcentrated mind. So someone who has pollution of the mind and they haven't practiced the teachings very closely, they'll have what's called a muddled mind. This is the words of the Buddha, where he talks about this muddle-mindedness, which is exactly the opposite of concentration. It's where the mind is congested. So someone who's practicing closely, that you would consider to make an offering to produce merit, who's sharing these teachings, their mind would be focused. It would be clear. They would be speaking very concise and very precisely. And then they would also have this faculty of wisdom. What that is where you have the wisdom of the path to enlightenment. That you're not only just learning and understanding the teachings intellectually, not only have you reflected on the teachings to independently verify them, but you've also been practicing the teachings, where that's where the true wisdom is cultivated. That as long as you're not practicing the teachings, there's still ignorance or unknowing of true reality in the mind. There's a lack of wisdom. So someone might intellectually understand the teachings, but if they haven't reflected on them and they haven't practiced them, then their mind is still unwise, because you could understand that it's unwise to take drugs and alcohol, for example, but maybe you're still ingesting drugs and alcohol. Or you could understand it's unwise to steal or have sexual misconduct or lie, but you're still stealing or having sexual misconduct or lying. So having this faculty of wisdom means not only have you intellectually understood the teachings, but you're practicing them in day-to-day life. And then he talks about with the destruction of the taints. What he's referring to here is the 10 fetters, or those pollutions of mind. With the destruction of the taints, he realizes for himself, with direct knowledge, meaning experience, in this very life, the taintless liberation of mind. Meaning the mind is no longer polluted. It's now free of discontentedness. That's what liberation means. It's free of these strong feelings. The mind is liberated, and it's been liberated by wisdom, by cultivating the wisdom through learning, reflecting, and practicing. That's what leads to the freedom. And now, having entered upon that particular mental state, the mind resides there. That's what he says. He resides in it, right? Because the enlightened mental state is a permanent mental state. It doesn't change. The mind is always peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. So what the Buddha is talking about here is an enlightened being. He's saying that would be an individual that would be wise to make offerings to. Because if an enlightened being is sharing their teaching, the teachings of the Buddha, then that means that other people can benefit from that. And having an enlightened being share the teachings would be a wonderful thing for the world to have. So if you supported that individual through sharing your time, effort, energy, or resources, the thing that's helping you is you're coming in contact with an individual who can now help you to get to enlightenment. It's not like there's any kind of mystical or magical thing where if you just walked into a room where there's an enlightened being sitting there and you made them an offering and you left, that somehow that's going to be beneficial for you. Instead, you would like to stay there and you'd like to talk to this individual and ask them questions and learn what it is they have to share. And then if they have books or classes or courses or retreats or things like this, you would like to participate in those things. That's what's actually going to lead to your enlightenment. So the Buddha here is talking about making gifts to an enlightened being, and he's describing it in a slightly different way than what he's described it in the previous discourses. So let me know what questions you guys have here by putting that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any and all questions that you like. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So I'm going to move to chapter 62 here. Yihang, you usually read a lot of these. Are you interested? Yeah, go ahead. Feel free to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I can also read all of them if this time nobody else raises hand.
Perfect. Yeah, if no one else raises their hand, go for it.
Okay. Persons who are worthy of gifts seek the discourse. So too, Badali, when a monk possesses 10 qualities, he is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respectful salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world. What are the 10? Here, Badali, a monk possesses the right view of one beyond training, the right intention of one beyond training, the right speech of one beyond training, the right action of one beyond training, the right livelihood of one beyond training, the right effort of one beyond training, the right mindfulness of one beyond training, the right concentration of one beyond training, the right wisdom of one beyond training, and the right liberation of one beyond training. When a monk possesses these 10 qualities, he is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respectful salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world.
Okay, thank you so much. So here again, the Buddha is talking about an enlightened being. He's talking about the tenfold path. In order to get to enlightenment, you need to learn and practice the eightfold path. The eightfold path is right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. There's individual teachings that you would need to learn about each one of those factors and dial it in closer and closer to your life. And this is what's going to move the mind to the enlightened mental state by purifying the mind. But then as you're getting closer and closer to enlightenment and the mind's actually enlightened, you'll be practicing what's called the tenfold path. There's something called right wisdom and right liberation that create the tenfold path. What right wisdom is having the wisdom of what it takes to be able to get to enlightenment, that you've learned, you've reflected, and you've practiced to the point where now your mind is fully wise about the path to enlightenment. So all the teachings of the Buddha that he shares, this is what's going to lead to the cultivation of right wisdom. And then right liberation is where the mind is actually liberated from discontentedness. It's free. That's what that word liberation means. It's free from discontentedness. So right wisdom and right liberation are produced by practicing the Eightfold Path. So there's nothing specific to teach in terms of like with right concentration or right mindfulness. There's certain things that you need to learn and practice in order to fully develop that factor of the Eightfold Path. But fully developing right wisdom and right liberation comes from fully developing the Eightfold Path. So here the Buddha is saying, okay, if you have come in contact with someone who has been practicing the tenfold path, if you know what the tenfold path is, you would be able to see somebody, for example, who's practicing right speech, that when they speak, they're always polite, kind, friendly, respectful. They're practicing not lying, not having slander, not having harsh speech, not having frivolous speech. They're practicing the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, which means they speak at the right time. What they say is true. They speak gentle. They speak beneficially. They speak with a mind of loving kindness. They're not harming through their speech or communications. They're not harming through their bodily actions or their livelihood. And all these other factors that you've learned, you would be able to see an individual as practicing that. And you would see their minds very peaceful and very joyful because of having fully trained their mind. So they would have right wisdom. They would be very easily able to describe the teachings. If anybody asked them any question about any aspect of the teachings, they wouldn't even have to go look at a book to be able to see what the teachings are. Because by the time you're enlightened, you fully upgraded your mind to this enlightened mental state. So if you think about being unenlightened, like an old archaic operating system on a computer, and by the time you upgrade this operating system on the computer, it runs effortlessly, right? So if you upgrade your mind to this new operating system, you'll be able to effortlessly talk about any of the teachings, because in order for you to have trained your mind and purified it, you would need to be able to understand the teachings deeply and practice them deeply. So you would have needed to cultivate right wisdom, and you would be experiencing right liberation. So if you see somebody who's not angry or frustrated or even the slightest bit annoyed, then you know that this individual is enlightened, and the Buddha sharing this would be a wise person to make offerings to. And he talks about these factors as one beyond training, meaning they've already trained their mind. Of course, they're still cultivating wisdom about many different things in the world, but in terms of the path to enlightenment, there's no more pollution. There's no more work to do in order to purify the mind, because the mind's already purified. They've been there, done that. What had to be done has been done. And now they're still cultivating wisdom about the world and things that they can do in the world and things like this. But in terms of the training for the path to enlightenment, they would have fully cultivated their mind. It's fully purified by this point. So coming in contact with this person and making offerings is a very helpful thing for the world, because now this person can be supported to share the teachings of the Buddha. And it's also very helpful for you, because now you're in contact with somebody who can share with you the path to enlightenment. So that's what the Buddha is describing here. So let me know if you guys have any questions on this one. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. So we'll move to the next one, which is chapter 63.
Persons who are worthy of gifts, seventh discourse. So too, possessing four factors, a monk is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respectful salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world. What for? Here, a monk is skilled in places, a long-distance shooter, a sharpshooter, and one who splits a great body. When and how monks is a monk skilled in places. Here, a monk is virtuous, practicing moral conduct. He resides restrained by the training guidelines, possessed wholesome conduct and wise decision-making, seeing danger in the slightest faults. Having undertaken the training guidelines, he trains in them. It is in this way that a monk is skilled in places. 2. And how is a monk a long-distance shooter? Here, any kind of form whatsoever, whether past, future, or present, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, a monk sees all forms as it really is, with correct wisdom thus: this is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. Any kind of feeling whatsoever, any kind of perception whatsoever, any kind of volitional formations, choices and decisions whatsoever, any kind of consciousness whatsoever, whether past, future, or present, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, a monk sees all consciousness as it really is, with correct wisdom thus: this is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. It is in this way that a monk is a long-distance shooter. 3. And how is a monk a sharpshooter? Here, a monk understands as it really is. This is discontentedness. He understands as it really is. This is the cause of discontentedness. He understands it as it really is. This is the elimination of discontentedness. He understands as it really is. This is the way leading to the elimination of discontentedness. It is in this way that a monk is a sharpshooter. 4. And how is a monk one who splits a great body? Here, a monk splits the great mass of ignorance, unknowing of true reality. It is in this way that a monk is one who splits a great body. Possessing these four qualities, a monk is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respectful salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world.
Okay, thank you. So here, the Buddha is using a little bit of an analogy to help people understand what he's teaching, because he taught in an oral tradition, and there's basically three ways to help people to remember your teachings if you're teaching in an oral tradition. One is to give lists. This is why we have the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, the Five Precepts, the Seven Factors of Enlightenment, the 10 Fetters, and all of these kinds of things, because if you can remember 4 out of the 5, you know there's one more, and your mind just needs to remember which one that is. So list is a great way to remember teachings when you're teaching in an oral tradition. The second way is that you essentially tell stories, right? That what the Buddha is doing here is you tell a story and something that people already know. So here people already know about shooting archery during this time. And then the third way is that you teach in a repetitive format where you just repeat things over and over and over again. And this is what will help people remember an oral tradition. So here we've got this story because people would have been familiar with soldiers and shooting arrows and things like this. So the Buddha was taking something people are already familiar with and casting his teachings into that. You'll see things like this, like soldiers. You'll see things about farming and things like this. And we're even aware of these things now because here, this first one that he's talking about, skilled in places. If you're shooting archery, you need to be skilled in terms of, if I'm standing on this hill and I shoot this particular arrow, it's going to carry for a certain distance and hit this particular person. So you're going to need to be skilled in places. And what the Buddha is saying here is this is related to moral conduct, that if you're practicing virtuous moral conduct, then this is an individual that you would look to in order to support with your generosity. Because if an individual who was a teacher was into gambling, or they were using substances that cause heedlessness or other things like this, your offerings would be going to support that. So the Buddha is teaching you to look for virtuous practitioners who are practicing virtuous moral conduct. And that would be an important quality of looking for someone who you're interested in supporting with your generosity. Then the second thing that he's talking about here, this long distance shooter, someone who can shoot really far distance with an arrow, right? This would be very challenging. But here he's casting it in terms of his teachings, which is somebody who's realized non-self, someone who realizes that the 5 aggregates are not who you are as a person, meaning the form, feeling, perception, volitional formations, and consciousness. I've taught these at different times in this program. The form is the physical form. The feelings are the feelings like pleasant feelings, painful feelings, neither painful nor pleasant. The perceptions are your views and opinions about the world that may or may not even be true. They're like assumptions. Things seem to be a certain way. Volitional formations are your choices and decisions, and the consciousness is the mind itself. So if you cling to any of these things because you have all 5 of these things, you're a living being, then you're not going to be able to experience even the first stage of enlightenment. You're going to need to eliminate the craving and clinging and holding on to these things, defining who you are as a person through these particular things. And this is what I describe as the universal truth of non-self, to help you get liberated from the pollution of personal existence view. And the Buddha here is saying someone who's accomplished that, then it would be wise to support them. Because this is one of the most challenging teachings on the path to enlightenment, is to understand what personal existence view is, and the solution to that being the universal truth of non-self. Then the third thing that the Buddha is saying to look for is somebody who's a sharp shooter, meaning they understand something very keen and very important, which is the Four Noble Truths. This is the very beginning of the path to enlightenment. If someone didn't even understand the beginning of the path to enlightenment about what is discontentedness, the cause of it, the elimination of it, and the way leading to the elimination of discontentedness, they haven't even gotten onto the path to enlightenment yet. So why would you support them if they haven't even chosen to learn the very first teaching of the Buddha, which is really helping you to have this breakthrough to be able to finally understand what's causing the mind to be discontent? So this is what he's describing here as the third quality. And then the fourth quality he's saying to look for is someone who has split a great body, right? So with archery, I imagine people could shoot an arrow and maybe it split through the body, right? And here, the way he's relating that is talking about someone who's basically eliminated ignorance or the unknowing of true reality. They've broken through, and now there's no longer any ignorance in the mind. So once again, he's talking about an enlightened being, but he's doing it in a unique way using this story. Because if someone has cultivated wisdom, they would no longer have this ignorance. Their mind would be enlightened, and this would be a wise person for you to come in contact with and be able to share your offerings with. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this particular teaching. Looks like Yihang, you have a question.
Thank you, Teacher David. I just have a question about the literature. I feel like, why do you think Buddha would use such a violent and story to tell in a good way? I don't know. I just feel like, isn't it a bit like violent, but it's in a promotional way?
Yeah, so one of the ways that a Buddha helps people to learn is through this storytelling. And the more graphic you can make your story, the more impact it's going to have to the mind, and someone's going to be able to remember it, right? So oftentimes what you'll find is the Buddha will use these very graphic stories in order to really like shock you into understanding his teachings. Like there's this one where he talks about developing mindfulness, and he talks about carrying a bowl of oil that is filled to the brim with oil. And on one side, you have a screaming crowd. On the other side, you have the most beautiful woman of all of the land who's singing a song. And behind you, you have someone carrying a sword. And that if you drop one drop of oil out of this bowl, they're going to chop your head off, right? This is something that I can remember very easily, even now, because it is so graphic. So this is something that somebody would have been able to understand at the time, because some of the students were actually soldiers and they were coming to study with the Buddha. So during this lifetime, there was a lot of war, even more so than now, because all these various kingdoms, these smaller kingdoms were fighting each other. Because if you think about the country of India, which now we know it as one big country, at one time there was lots of little kingdoms and there was lots of fights back and forth and back and forth. So people would have been very familiar with this, and then he could use it in a way to be able to create a positive out of it so that people could now understand it in the terms of a positive thing.
Thank you.
Okay, let me see if we have any other questions anywhere. Okay, we don't have any other questions anywhere. So I'm going to move on to the next chapter. And Yihang, if you'd like to read this one, go for it.
Yes. Persons who are worthy of gifts. 8th Discourse. So too, monks, possessing 5 qualities, a monk is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respectful salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world. What 5? Here a monk is one who listens, who destroys, who guards, who patiently endures, and who goes. 1. And how is a monk one who listens? Here, when the teachings and discipline proclaimed by the Tathagata are being taught, a monk heeds it, attends to it, directs his whole mind to it, and listens to the teachings with the enthusiastic ears. It is in this way that a monk is one who listens. 2. And how is a monk one who destroys? Here, a monk does not tolerate an arisen sensual thought, but abandons it, dispels it, terminates it, and obliterates it. He does not tolerate an arisen thought of ill will, an arisen thought of harming any other evil, unwholesome status that arise from time to time, but abandons them, dispels them, terminates them, and obliterates them. It is in this way that a monk is one who destroys it. 3. And how is a monk one who guards? Here, having seen a form with the eye, a monk does not grasp its marks and features, since if he left the eye sense space unrestrained, evil, unwholesome status of craving and aversion might invade him. He practices restraint over it. He guards the eye sense space. He undertakes the restraint of the eye sense space. Having heard a sound with the ear, having smelled an odor with the nose, having tasted a flavor with the tongue, having touched a physical object with the body, having recognized a mental object with the mind. He guards the mind sense space. He undertakes the restraint of the mind sense space. It is in this way that a monk is one who guards. 4. And how is a monk one who patiently endures? Here, a monk patiently endures cold and heat, hunger and thirst, contact with flies, mosquitoes, wind, the burning sun, and serpents, rude and offensive ways of speech. He is able to remain content with arising bodily feelings that are painful, agonizing, sharp, piercing, distressing, disagreeable, weakening one's vitality. It is in this way that a monk is one who patiently endures. 5. And how is a monk one who goes? Here, a monk is one who easily goes to that region where he has never before gone in this long time, that is, to the stilling of all activities, the letting go of all material possessions, the destruction of craving, freedom from strong feelings, elimination, nibbana, enlightenment. It is in this way that a monk is one who goes. Possessing these 5 qualities, a monk is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respectful salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So here I'll just go through each of these and help you guys to understand them. Some of them are pretty obvious. Here, the Buddha is saying, okay, an individual who is going to be a wise person for you to make offerings to would be an individual who is listening to the teaching and heeds the teachings and pays attention to the teachings and actually listens to the teachings with enthusiastic ears so that they're deeply interested in learning and practicing the teachings. Then when he says one who destroys, what he's talking about here is applying right mindfulness to be aware of a sensual thought, of a thought of ill will or a thought of harming, and that when it arises in the mind, that an individual takes action through right effort to cut it off and let it go. Right? So here, this description isn't someone who's not yet enlightened. They're maybe in that first or second stage of enlightenment, that they're still having sensual thoughts. So they're cutting that off and letting it go. And that's one who destroys. And then one who guards would be one who's practicing mindfulness or awareness of mind. And they're guarding the mind through not allowing the sense spaces, the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, or the mind itself to grab on to any particular thing. So if you see a beautiful car, oh my gosh, that's the most beautiful car ever. Oh, I want to have that right now. That would be someone who's unrestrained, right? But somebody who's restrained would be like, oh, wow, interesting, nice car. They won't necessarily need to have that car right now. Or if you see a beautiful house or a beautiful woman or a beautiful handsome man or something like this, if the mind is unrestrained, it's going to want that particular thing right now. So again, this is an individual that still has sensual desire in their mind. They're potentially in that first or second stage of enlightenment is what the Buddha is describing. Then he talks about an individual who patiently endures, because as you go forward in life, there's going to be times where the body is cold or it's hot, or there's hunger, or there's thirst, or you have contact with flies and mosquitoes. Maybe there's wind or burning sun or these other things. There's going to be people who have rude and offensive speech. Even when you're enlightened, people are still going to talk to you in ways that are rude and offensive, right? Because people aren't going to necessarily know that you're enlightened. And even if they know you're enlightened, that doesn't mean they're going to necessarily speak polite and friendly to you, because their mind is unenlightened and they don't understand how to do that, right? So you're going to need to be patient when you hear these things, right? And then he's talking about when you experience certain pains in the physical body, because even when you're enlightened, you're still going to experience certain physical pains. He's saying that you can patiently endure this because you know that these things are impermanent and you're not going to form your inner feelings in your mind based on these particular things, because these things are all impermanent. No reason to get agitated or annoyed or frustrated. It's not going to help you. And you can train your mind to be patient when these things are occurring. And then lastly, he's talking about an individual who's willing to easily travel, because as you get closer and closer to enlightenment, if you decide to teach, there's going to be people who invite you to travel throughout the world to come share the teachings. And if you're attached to a particular place, you're not going to be willing to go travel and go somewhere that people are interested in learning the teaching. So if somebody's enlightened, they would have easily been able to let go of this particular place where they're living and maybe even the material possessions like the Buddha's talking about, and now go to somewhere else and teach over there because people are requesting for you to teach. And if people are requesting for you to teach, then you go teach, right? So that's what the Buddha is teaching you here. And he's essentially talking about someone who's enlightened. So it looks like Yusuf has a question here. Go ahead, Yusuf.
Hi. Can you go up first, please?
Which number?
About, I think 1 or 2? 2.
Number 2, okay.
Yeah. Here the Buddha says repeatedly to let go of any harmful thought that do come to the mind. He didn't say to reflect on it later on. So is the core of his teachings to just let go, or there is reflecting that he do mentions it? Maybe not in this discourse, but in another one.
Here, he's not teaching you what you should do in order to get to enlightenment. Here, he's teaching you about the type of individual that you would be looking for in order to practice generosity to produce merit. And he's talking about an individual who doesn't tolerate a central thought, a thought of ill will, or a thought of harming. In terms of what to do to actually eliminate these things, that's what he teaches in his other discourses. So here, he's not describing that intentionally because he's just describing the type of individual to look for.
Okay. About being content with painful bodily sensations, does he mean about content is knowing that it is impermanent and will fade away?
Yes, because like say, for example, you eat something and now like maybe 2 or 3 hours later, your stomach's kind of turning and churning and it's really painful in there based on what's going on in your stomach. If you're crying out in agony and you just can't take the pain and you just think that everything is so miserable and you're just so discontent about that, your mind still has craving for this body to be permanently comfortable, not realizing the impermanent nature of this body, that sometimes there's going to be physical pain. So if your mind is enlightened or very close to it, when you're experiencing those kinds of things, you would be able to reside peaceful and joyful. You would still feel the pain and you might, oh man, you might make some of those kinds of sounds, but your mind is completely content. You're not upset, you're not annoyed, you're not frustrated or anything like that, because you know that this situation is impermanent and it's only a matter of time before it's gone. So you'd be able to patiently endure it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, let me see if we have any questions anywhere else. Okay, I'm not seeing any anywhere else. So let's go to the next one, which is chapter 65.
Persons who are worthy of gifts. Ninth discourse. So too monks, possessing 4 qualities a monk is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respectful salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world. What for? Virtual practicing moral conduct, speed, patience, and gentleness. Is it speed?
I'll explain it to you.
Possessing these 4 factors, a monk is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respectful salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world.
Okay, thank you, Yihang. So here, we've seen virtuous moral conduct many times, right? That's what the Buddha is saying is kind of a prerequisite for you to be able to practice generosity to produce merit, because someone who's in either the first, second, third, or fourth stage of enlightenment, they will be practicing virtuous moral conduct to a certain degree. And then there's the speed, which, Yihang is like, hold on a second. You're probably thinking like getting to enlightenment fast, like, that's not what the Buddha taught. And that's not what he's teaching here either. When he's talking about speed, what he's talking about is this enlightenment factor of energy, that you would have this willingness to do something. This is where I explain it down here in the comments section, that this is going to eradicate any complacency in the mind, where there's effort, determination, ambition, initiative, motivation, vigor, enthusiasm, and a willingness to do something. That's what he's talking about here with speed, because anybody who's interested in hurrying up and getting to enlightenment, they haven't understood what enlightenment is yet. And then there's this patience, which that needs to be cultivated in the mind. And then there's this gentleness about the individual, this harshness, this strongness, this controlling nature, putting expectations on other people, wanting other people to be a certain way. That's the complete opposite of gentleness. You would like to practice this gentleness. And here he's again describing an individual that you could make offerings to, but also you can pick up information here that helps you understand how to practice to a certain degree that you would like to practice these same qualities. So let me know if you guys have questions here. Looks like Yusuf has a question.
If it is related to what you are talking about right now, can you give a little bit examples about gentleness? I find it hard to really understand it.
Do you have a question, or are you asking me to give examples?
Give examples.
Oh, you would like me to give examples?
About gentleness.
Right? Yeah, so gentleness is like in terms of how you speak and how you conduct yourself, and also how you move about the world, right? Like oftentimes when there's craving in the world, there's these real fast, rapid movements, where when you have this gentleness about you, where your mind doesn't have this craving, you can just move about the world in a nice, steady, consistent way where there's not a bunch of these rapid movements. And you'll see this in a person's bodily actions, but you also see it in their speech too, in the way that they speak, that they're not speaking real harsh and real aggressive and very controlling. Instead, they're speaking very softly and very gently and very calmly as they're talking to people. And their bodily movements are the same way, because all of this is emanating from the mind. The mind is the boss, the body's the employee. So the way you speak is indicative of what's going on in your mind. And your bodily actions is also indicative of what's going on in the mind. So if you've trained your mind well, then your speech and your actions should be gentle and calm and not real harsh and aggressive and rough.
So will I be interested in whenever I see myself speaking too fast or moving too fast to like calm down?
Yes, very much so. You're not interested in the real harsh tones. I imagine from what I've heard in your language of Arabic, there's sometimes some very harsh tones that I would perceive it as harsh. I don't know how the Arabic people think of it, but it sounds very harsh and very aggressive. And you can soften that up a bit, and you'll notice that you'll have much better experiences with the people around you.
What is it? Do you remember it?
Just in general, I don't know the Arabic language, so I wouldn't be able to give you those particular words, but just in general, like the certain tone and tempo of a conversation can sometimes be somewhat aggressive and harsh with some people, right? So you would like to soften that up and be more gentle in the way that you speak and the way that you interact with people.
About gentleness also, sometimes when I am late for something and I move so fast, I notice my mind is becoming also so fast, but there is no time to be gentle. So what to do here? Should I be calm or to go fast?
You shouldn't go fast. The reason why you're saying there's no time to be gentle is because there's craving in the mind. You got to balance your life and come to the middle way where you can gradually move through the world in a gentle way, both with your speech and actions. You've got too much craving in there, and that's why you're go, 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 go. And when you're moving fast like that, you're going to make unwise decisions that are going to produce unwholesome results. So this gentleness will help you to be able to make wise decisions so that you can experience only wholesome results. Enlightened being isn't going to be moving through the world fast, but they're going to be efficient as they're moving about the world and they're doing things. They're just not going to be fast and quick.
What if you were late for an appointment?
Well, if you're late,
move fast.
If you're late, that's just impermanence. I don't move fast if I'm late. I was late for class at the temple on Wednesday, normally a trip that takes me 20 minutes in the car, it took me an hour and 25 minutes because it was raining, and it took me a long time to get there. I was actually 15 or 20 minutes late showing up to the temple. I just calmly made my way to the temple and just calmly made my way into the classroom. Rushing is only going to lead to you tripping and falling, or making a rash decision that leads to a car accident or something like this. If somebody else is impatient and they're getting angry because you're behind schedule, they're causing that. You're not causing that. Sometimes people hurry up because they don't want to meet with the anger of somebody who's now angry because of being late, or maybe they don't want to be fired from their job or something like this. But you need to be comfortable with impermanence and realizing that these things are normal. So an enlightened being's not going to rush just because they're behind schedule, because they understand that it's not possible to always be on time. I've been teaching at this particular temple for about 6 years, and this is the first time that I can remember that I've ever been behind schedule, that I've been late in terms of showing up in the morning for a class. And it's going to happen, right, in 6 years. Now, if I did that every single class, of course, students wouldn't be interested in coming and learning with me. Or if they did come, they would all come in late. But what you would like to do is build a habit of showing up places on time, but understand that occasionally you're not going to be able to do that because of impermanence.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So I think, Yihang, your question got answered there. Saw your hand went down. Okay.
Yes, it was actually kind of pretty similar. Sometimes I feel like at a place that I feel like suddenly rush or suddenly fasten the movement makes the mind a bit shaken, or it starts not unstable. But sometimes I feel like someone else are there, like hurry us. They will say like, we just give you 5 minutes, move to that place, and then hurry. And then, I don't know, at that moment, just at that second, I don't know what to do.
Yeah, you just take your... Oh, sorry. I thought you were done.
And I just wanted to say, I think that discussion answers that just has to keep the mind stable, prioritize that one first.
Yeah, no matter what's going on, even if people around you are like, hurry, come, you would like to not be influenced by that, because that's someone putting their expectations on you. That's trying to get you running and moving fast, and now you're not making wise decisions. You can trip and fall, sprain your ankle, and end up in the hospital for 3 days perhaps, or break your leg, or have an expensive medical bill just because of the craving. And that's the unwholesome results, or the unwholesome karma based in craving. So you're never interested in operating through craving. We have a 2-story house here at our village. And my son sometimes in the past used to be downstairs, and I would ask him to go get me something upstairs, and you would see him take off and kind of run up the stairs, and I would call him back so that he wouldn't do it with craving. And slowly but surely, he trained his mind to not run and go do things very quickly and aggressively like that. And that's what's going to lead to wholesome results in your life.
Thank you.
Okay, Yusuf, I don't know if you have a question or if you'd like to read, but go ahead, sir.
Sorry, I don't really understand the way in these classes. Like, am I able to ask questions about things like this, or just what the Buddha is saying?
You can ask questions about the teachings, and your question that you asked was about the teachings.
Okay.
Yeah, that was fine.
Yeah,
you can ask any questions you like about the teachings, because
I would like to ask something.
Each chapter we're studying, you would like to ask questions about that chapter.
Okay, I would like to add something. What if I was always on a mistake of complacency, being late? Like, I always be late out of complacency. So like when the time has come to meet them and I am still at the home, am I still not interested in being hurry to move fast, even though that it is my mistake?
Still, yeah, because you're not going to be on time every single time. And if somebody is angry because you're late, they're causing their own anger. But for you, it would be wise that you regularly show up on time, but you realize that occasionally you're not going to be on time. Now, if you're complacent and you're regularly showing up late, that's unwise. You need to change that. But still, in no situation, you should try to hurry and go somewhere, because it's just going to produce unwholesome results. It's coming from your mind's own craving.
Thank you again.
Yeah, you're welcome. So, Yihang, this particular chapter is actually very similar to the last one. The only difference here is that the Buddha is adding this fifth quality of mildness, which is very similar to the gentleness. And here I describe what all of these things are. And here, this mildness is the tranquility of the mind, the relaxed, steady, stable, peaceful stillness of mind. So I don't know that we need to read this one because it's exactly reads the same way as before. It just is adding that extra quality. So there's virtue, which is practicing moral conduct, speed, gentleness, patience, and mildness, which is the tranquility of the mind. So now let's go to the next one, which this is chapter 67. So if you'd like to read this one, you're welcome to.
No. Persons who are worthy of gifts. 11th discourse. So too monks, possessing 8 qualities, a monk is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respectful salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world. What 8? 1. Here a monk is virtuous, practicing moral conduct. He resides restrained by the training guidelines, possessed of wholesome conduct and wise decision-making, seeing danger in the slightest faults. Having undertaken the training guidelines, he trains in them. 2. He respectfully eats whatever food they give him, whether rough or excellent, without being annoyed. 3. He is disinterested in bodily, verbal, and mental misconduct. He is disinterested in the acquisition of the numerous kinds of evil, unwholesome qualities. 4. He is gentle and pleasant to live with, and he does not attempt to agitate other monks. 5. He reveals his tricks, ploys, schemes, and ruses as they really are to the teacher or to his wise fellow monks, so that they can make an effort to stamp them out of him. 6. He is one who takes up the training, determined whether or not other monks train, I will train. 7. When moving, he moves only along a straight path. In this connection, this is the straight path, right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. 8. He has aroused energy thus, willingly, let only my skin, sinews, and bones remain, and let the flesh and blood dry up in this body, but I will not relax the energy so long as I have not attained what can be attained by strength, energy, and effort. Possessing these 8 qualities, a monk is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respectful salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world.
Okay, thank you, Yihang. So here we've got a much more detailed discourse of the Buddha walking you through about how to determine where an individual would be wise for you to practice generosity to produce merit and help the teachings of the Buddha continue. Of course, he's starting with virtuous moral conduct, which he oftentimes teaches. But here, notice he's saying that one sees the slightest danger, sees danger in the slightest faults. That's what we were just talking about. Like if you're trying to hurry up and get to a meeting, that's like the danger in the slightest fault. Like you could trip and fall, and the natural law of karma is like, oh my goodness, why hurry up and try to go there when it's just in some impermanence that you're experiencing? Don't allow the craving to motivate these unskillful decisions. So you would need to be able to see this danger in the slightest faults. Then an individual that would be wise to make offerings to is somebody who is willing to accept whatever food you give, right? Because if you're offering food, they would need to accept that and be able to eat it, right? But of course, there's some people who only eat plant-based food, so it would be wise to make offerings to people who only eat plant-based food, and that would be a wise offering for you because it's helpful to the environment if you offer just plant-based food. Then he is disinterested in bodily, verbal, and mental misconduct, right? And not interested in attaining or acquiring these evil, unwholesome qualities, right? This is something that you would look for in an individual, where if they're aggressive and hostile, if they're using profanity and things like this isn't something that you would be interested to support necessarily. Someone who's gentle and pleasant to live with, because the Buddha would live right alongside of his students. They would invite him into their house, and he would live there for a week or a month or longer, and he would teach. So an individual who's going to get to enlightenment, they wouldn't be agitated themselves, and they wouldn't attempt to agitate other people either. They would be gentle and pleasant to live with. Then this part where he talks about revealing his tricks, ploys, schemes, and ruses, this is like any unwise conduct that you have. The Buddha is saying that you should expose that to your teacher, because then your teacher would be able to help you to be able to eliminate that. Where if you didn't explain to your teacher the things that you were doing that were unwise, you wouldn't ever be able to get the help that you need. Sometimes a student might try to look so wonderful and so great in front of their teacher, but in the background, they're really doing certain unwholesome things. And that means that they're never getting the help that they need in order to improve those unwholesome things. And they're still experiencing unwholesome results based on those unwise decisions. So if you flip this around, instead of telling your teacher all the wonderful things you're doing in the world, talk to your teacher about the challenges and difficulties and struggles that you're having. And this will help you to be able to then get the wisdom that you need in order to improve your mental state. But of course, here, the Buddha is talking about an individual to make offerings to, but you can use this as a way to strengthen your practice too. He is one who takes up training determined, whether or not other monks train, I will train. So if you have an individual that is like, oh, I'm only going to meditate if everybody else meditates, right? This person's attached, right? They don't have their own independent practice. They're only doing something because other people are choosing to do it. But if one is determined and they're confident and they're diligent in the teachings, they would train whether other people train or not, right? This is important. And then when moving, he moves along a straight path, meaning the straight path of the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path is what an individual would need to learn and practice in order to get to enlightenment. So he's encouraging you that when you're looking for someone to make offerings to, look for somebody who's practicing the Eightfold Path closely. And then this last one, he says that you maintain this enlightenment factor of energy, that even if you were, close to death, that as long as this body is able to be alive and as long as this mind is alive in this existence, that you will ensure that you apply effort and energy to attaining the unattained, meaning attain the jhanas or the 4 stages of enlightenment, because that's the type of individual who's determined, dedicated, and diligent. And that's who the Buddha is suggesting that you make offerings to, because that's an individual that's going to be able to share the teachings with others in a way that's going to help countless people. So it looks like Yusuf, you have a question. Go ahead, sir.
Can you go to the 4th one, please?
Sure.
Yeah. He talks about being pleasant to live with. One of the qualities of my mind is to really annoy others or to make them agitate or something like this. For example, when my mom left something heavy, I say to my dad to annoy him out of joking, as a joke. Hey, Dad, why don't you lift it? Why do you leave Mom to lift it? It's heavy. So he will be annoyed by that. What I am looking for here is an advice from you, because my mind likes to listen to your advices.
Yeah, I don't suggest you tell your dad what to do in those situations. Whatever relationship your mom and your dad have, that's between them. And you putting your expectations on somebody else, even your dad, and especially your dad, and telling him what he should or shouldn't do, this is only going to produce unwholesome karma for you. And particularly since you're intentionally trying to agitate him, of course, an individual can't agitate somebody else. It's their own craving, desire, attachment that's causing the agitation. But for you to say something like that to anybody, especially your dad, it's putting your expectations on this person and trying to tell them what they should and shouldn't do. And this is something you need to eliminate from your practice, where you're not just not telling your dad what to do, but you don't tell your teacher what to do. You don't tell your friends what to do. You don't tell other people what they should or shouldn't do, because people are functioning in a way that they think is wise. And if they would like your advice, if they would like your suggestions, they will ask for it. But when you're giving your unsolicited guidance, this is your ego coming through, and you would like to eliminate that.
Well, I didn't say anything to my dad that is unwise. Like I just said, hi dad, why don't you lift it, or would you like to lift it, or something like this. I mean, my point is here about the annoying jokes I make. Is it okay because they are the one who make their own discontentedness? About the annoying jokes I make.
Yeah, so even though you think in your mind you're joking, this is you putting your expectations on somebody. And no matter whether it's a joke or not, you're still putting your expectations on someone. And it's going to produce unwholesome results for you because your dad gets agitated, he gets annoyed, and he gets frustrated at you. He thinks that you're the one who's causing his agitation, and now it damages your relationship. If you would like to help mom, you help mom. That's your choice. You can make that choice. And as you're helping mom, maybe someday your dad sees that and decides that he would like to help. But you putting the expectation on your dad to help, whether it's a joke or not, it's not going to lead to wholesome results because that's your craving, your expectation of wanting him to be a certain way when he needs to live based on his own choices. So as long as you put your expectations on others, people are going to put their expectations on you. I imagine that in certain situations, your dad does exactly the same thing to you in other situations where he's putting his expectations on you.
Yeah, of course he does that. So even though that, what do you have to say?
And that's your karma. That's the results of your decisions. That's the you putting expectations on him. He's putting expectations on you. If you would like to clear this out and get to a loving relationship, you're going to need to change your mind and transform your mind where you're not putting expectations on other people. And someday you might actually have somebody politely and kindly and friendly point that out to you, that you put out your expectations on people, and this is very unwise.
Yeah, there was someone who was pointing this for me. So even though, even though that they are the one who are making their own discontentedness, I should not be interested in telling even the slightest annoying joke to them, because they will see it as they are unenlightened. They will see that I am the reason they are annoyed. So that will be a bad karma, right?
It's unwholesome karma, yeah. There's ways to joke people in a friendly, polite, and kind way, and that's what you would like to be able to do. And it takes more wisdom for you to be able to do that. So when we talk about cultivating wisdom on the path to enlightenment, sure, you need to learn meditation training. Sure, you need to learn the Eightfold Path, the 5 precepts, and all these other things. But you also need to do things like learning how to joke in a wholesome and friendly and respectful way. Because if you go around joking in this way, people are going to push you away from them, because that's your ego coming through, and that's your arrogance and pride and your expectations, and people aren't going to be interested in being around that, and you're not going to be well received by others, and you'll find that it's a struggle and difficult to have relationships. Like, you often ask questions about relationships, and I know that a lot of your relationships are struggling, and these are the reasons why, because of the ways that you conduct yourself.
Maybe you need to make an episode about how to joke as an enlightened being. Well, that might be helpful.
Everybody's going to have their own character, their own personality. And when you get rid of your pollutions, that's what will help you to do this. So rather than teach you how to joke, what I'm doing is I'm teaching you how to eliminate your pollutions of mind. And as you do so, then you'll be able to come up through your own character and personality with jokes that are wholesome and wise and respectful.
Yeah, I guess what I said was a joke too, so you can continue. Thank you.
I see. More expectations, right?
Sorry, you can continue.
Oh, now you're controlling me, telling me what I should and shouldn't do. These are expectations, Yusuf. You got to watch that. All right, go ahead, Yihang.
I also have a question about he was talking about the food people are offering, and he'll just accept. And I'm not sure, may I ask you, like, would there be any situation you encountered that people offered you non-vegan food?
Yeah, I've had like people give me non-vegan stuff before, and when I see it, I just accept it, and then I give it to somebody else who I know eats food that is meat. This happens every once in a while. I think in maybe 6 years of having been accepting offerings this way, I think I've had 2 people give me something that was that was meat. And And one of them, I didn't even know that's what it was. I bit into it and I saw it. I was like, oh, whoa. And I just threw it away because I'd already bit into it. And the other one was a package thing. So I could see on the package that it was meat. And I just gave it to somebody else that would eat that.
Thank you. That was just my curiosity.
Yeah.
But thank you very much.
And when these things occur, it's important that an individual isn't discontent. So like when I received the offerings from people, I was very appreciative that they practiced generosity with me. And then when I accepted the offering, I just knew that, okay, I'm not going to eat this particular thing, the packaged good one. I just accepted the person's generosity and then I just gave it to somebody else. So there was no annoyment there, but I was just a wise choice that I wasn't going to choose to eat this.
Understood. Thanks.
Okay, let me check if we have any questions. Looks like Mayu Lee has a question on Facebook. She asked, at some point I get complacent, but when reflecting on own death, it motivates me to get back to meditation. But it was fear of not being able to attain enlightenment before death that motivated me. Can this be my craving? Yes, it could be, but sometimes you use one craving in order to get rid of another one, right? So if you have a craving to get to enlightenment, this could help you to get away from any particular craving for existence or something else like this. So like my son one time, he was really attached to sleeping with his mom. And I knew this was causing them problems because they would argue about things. You know, she would want him to come to sleep and he wasn't ready to come to sleep. It was like a husband and wife, right? So I told my son that I said, hey, you know, you have this extra room that when we bought the house, it was for you. And if you'd like to sleep there, Dad was thinking about putting a TV in there to make it more comfortable because I had this extra TV in the house that nobody was using. And he was like, TV? Right? Because he was like attached to TV at that time. He was like, TV? I was like, yeah, I'll put a TV in your room if you'd like to go in there. So he started spending time in his room watching TV, and it slowly helped him to get to the point where he wasn't so attached to sleeping with his mom. And so sometimes you use one craving to help you get rid of another one. So you can do these kinds of things occasionally. Just be sure you're not causing any harm. And, of course, any kind of cravings going to produce unwholesome results. But there's certain cravings like him craving to watch TV. Okay, he's got that craving and he ultimately needs to get rid of it. But it's not causing other people any kind of harm by him watching TV, for example. Okay, great question there. All right, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere else. So Yihang will go to this next one, which I think is 68.
Persons who are worthy of gifts. 12th discourse. Monks, possessing 8 qualities, a monk is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respectful salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world. What 8? 1. Here a monk is virtuous, practicing moral conduct. He resides restrained by the training guidelines, possessed of wholesome conduct and wise decision-making, seeing danger in the slightest faults. Having undertaken the training guidelines, he trains in them. 2. He has learned such, remembers what he has learned, and accumulates what he has learned. Those teachings that are good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good in the end, with the right meaning and phrasing, which proclaim the perfectly complete and pure spiritual life. Such teachings as these he has learned so much of, retained in mind, recited verbally, investigated with the mind, and penetrated well by view. 3. He has aroused energy. He is strong, firm in effort, and has not cast off the duty of cultivating wholesome qualities. 4. He is a forest dweller, one who resorts to remote lodgings. 5. He has vanquished discontentedness and excitement. He overcame discontentedness whenever it arose. 6. He has vanquished fear and terror. He overcame fear and terror whenever they arose. 7. He gains at will, without trouble or difficulty, the 4 jhanas that constitute the higher mind and are dwellings in peacefulness in this very life. 8. With the destruction of the 10 fetters, he has realized for himself with direct knowledge experience in this very life, the tentless liberation of mind, liberation by wisdom, and having entered upon it, he resides in it. Possessing these 8 qualities, a monk is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respectful salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So here there's many different qualities, some of which we've already talked about, like the first one, a virtuous moral conduct we've talked about. We've essentially been talking about the second one, about someone who's interested in learning and practicing the teachings and remembers them and investigates them and penetrated them. We've talked about this energy, this enlightenment factor of energy. This fourth one is all about being able to be independent and be comfortable alone. Nowadays, we don't necessarily dwell in the forest, but an individual who's either enlightened or close to it, they would be comfortable with being alone. Vanquish discontentedness means that the mind no longer experiences discontentedness, so therefore this person's enlightened. The sixth one here is eliminated or vanquished fear and terror, because by the time you get to enlightenment, you no longer have any fear whatsoever. And then number 7, an individual has trained and acquired and attained the 4 jhanas. These are certain improved qualities of mind that you experience as you're making your way to the first stage of enlightenment. And then number 8, he's talking about someone who's completely eliminated the 10 fetters. So what he's describing here is someone who's enlightened. And he's saying that this would be a person that would be wise to support, because once again, they're bringing the teachings into the world in a way that others can benefit from this. Okay, it looks like Yusuf has a question here. What is the remedy for excitement? So excitement, what the Buddha is talking about here is that conditional pleasant feelings, right? So what's causing that is craving, desire, attachment. That's the same thing that's causing the painful feelings. If you allow the mind to get so excited when it's sunny outside, that means when it's not sunny, that conditions change. You're going to be sad when it's raining. Or if you get so excited when your bank account balance is a certain level, then when it goes down below that, you'll be angry or sad or frustrated. So you need to eliminate the conditioned feelings where the mind is basing its inner feelings on some condition. That's the whole path to enlightenment. And the same condition that is causing sadness and anger and all those other painful feelings is the same condition that's causing the pleasant feelings. And this is one of the real secrets, even though it's not a secret. It's kind of like a best practice, or like a real I guess they call it a hack now, right? Like to really understand the path to enlightenment, you need to understand that conditioned pleasant feelings are part of the problem. Sometimes people don't understand that, because the mind with craving, desire, attachment chases after happiness, but you can only be happy when you get what you want. So therefore, when you can't get what you want, you're going to be sad or frustrated. So if you can get a mind to understand the wisdom of elimination of conditional pleasant feelings, that will actually help you to eliminate the painful feelings. You'll never eliminate your painful feelings as long as you're holding on to the temporary happiness or the temporary excitement. You need to be willing to let that go in order to get to the permanent happiness or the permanent joy. So that's what he's talking about here, is eliminating craving, desire, attachment in order to eliminate these conditional pleasant feelings. And so you're looking for somebody who's done that. So you wouldn't see an enlightened being like bouncing off the wall and so excited about something. It's like, oh, wow, wonderful, nice to see you. Oh, it's great to see you. But they're not going to be bouncing off the walls and these kinds of things. Oh, I got a new car. Look at me. Aren't I so great? I'm so excited. These kinds of things just don't happen for an enlightened being, because, yeah, they need a car and they need to drive the car. So let's just drive the car. This thing is impermanent. No need to get all excited about it. Or any other object. You're not going to get excited about a new mobile phone or a new friend or anything like this. It's just like, okay, well, great. I have a new friend. Excellent. Great. So you just maintain your composure without going into this extreme high. So therefore, you're not going to experience this extreme low either. Your mind's going to be in the middle, where your mind is calm and peaceful and joyful all the time. Okay, it looks like we have a question from Brent here on YouTube. Brent's asking, how does a practitioner gain at will one of the four jhanas and dwell in the four jhanas. This is through the Eightfold Path. You would need to be able to learn and practice the Eightfold Path. That's what leads to the four jhanas. So when he says gains at will, meaning you understand what it takes to get to the four jhanas. So if you tweak the Eightfold Path really closely in your life, you will be able to produce the jhanas at will, meaning that your mind will move through those four attainments, and ultimately those qualities that you experience, those improved qualities in the jhanas, you will retain those all the way through to enlightenment. So sometimes people think that the jhanas, that you only experience them during meditation or something like this, but you actually are experiencing these qualities at all times because there's certain phases that your mind goes through before you get to the first stage of enlightenment. So attaining it or gaining it at will means that you understand exactly what it takes to get there because you've been there, you've done that. What the Buddha is talking about here is an enlightened being. So an individual would have already experienced the jhanas on their way to enlightenment, and they would know exactly how to do that, which is the Eightfold Path of tweaking that. And that's what leads to the jhanas. Okay, great questions here. Great discussion. All right, that's everything I'm seeing so far. So let's go to the next one, which should be chapter 69. All right, Yihan, go ahead, ma'am.
Persons who are worthy of gifts. 13th Discourse. So too monks, possessing 5 qualities, a monk is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respectful salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world. What 5? He patiently endures forms, patiently endures sounds, patiently endures odors, patiently endures flavors, and patiently endures physical objects. 1. And how is it that a monk patiently endures forms? Here, when a monk sees a form with the eye, he does not become captivated by a tempting form and can concentrate his mind. It is in this way that a monk patiently endures forms. 2. And how is it that a monk patiently endures sounds? Here, when a monk hears a sound with the ear, he does not become captivated by a tempting sound and can concentrate his mind. It is in this way that a monk patiently endures sounds. 3. And how is it that a monk patiently endures odors? Here, when a monk smells an odor with the nose, he does not become captivated by a tempting odor and can concentrate his mind. It is in this way that a monk patiently endures odors. 4. And how is it that a monk patiently endures flavors? Here, when a monk experiences a flavor with the tongue, he does not become captivated by a tempting flavor and can concentrate his mind. It is in this way that a monk patiently endures flavors. 5. And how is it that a monk patiently endures physical objects? Here, when the monk feels a physical object with the body, he does not become captivated by a tempting physical object and can concentrate his mind. It is in this way that a monk patiently endures physical objects. Possessing these 5 qualities, a monk is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respectful salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So what the Buddha is talking about here is somebody who has restrained the mind and has reduced sensual desire. This is the 4th fetter in the mind, that as long as the mind's longing, yearning through the sense bases, an individual is going to experience a lot of discontentedness. But if somebody's restrained their mind and they can endure certain disagreeable things that are experiencing contact through the eyes, ears, nose, the tongue, and the body, he's not talking about the mind itself in this one, then this individual has trained to a certain degree. By the time you eliminate sensual desire, there's no longer agreeable contact and disagreeable contact. It's just contact. But here the Buddha is talking about someone who's patiently enduring these kinds of things. So like, sometimes when I teach at the temple, there's like a maybe somebody nearby in the city, like working on a building, and they might be grinding a tool like, right? Or there might be some other sound. One time there was a band outside the temple, a walking band, and they were like just going at it, and people couldn't even hear me. Even with the microphone, people in the temple couldn't even hear what I was saying. So you need to be able to patiently endure these kinds of things because they're temporary, they're impermanent. No need to be upset or angry or frustrated. Just patiently endure them and know that they are impermanent. So the Buddha is looking to guide you to practice generosity with someone who has this. Whereas if you see somebody is getting agitated or annoyed at the slightest little sound or odor or flavor, any of these other things that comes through the sense bases, then you know that they haven't trained their mind very closely. So it looks like Yihang, you have a question. Go ahead, ma'am.
I have a question about the music, like the sounds.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder how would an enlightened being, or do they enjoy music, or do they still listen to music, or they just don't do music at all? And then I have another question that because sometimes I feel like some of the music helps me to concentrate the mind. What about this situation?
Sure. So it depends if you get to enlightenment as an ordained practitioner or a household practitioner. Ordained practitioners aren't supposed to listen to any music whatsoever because music takes the mind up into an elevated state, or some music can bring you down into a sad state too if you have craving, desire, attachment in your mind. So if someone's ordained, the way the Buddha taught is not to listen to any music because this distances the mind from that object and trains the mind to let go so that it's no longer affected by the up and down aspect of music. And we kind of see that in the unenlightened state as desirable, that, wow, this music makes me very excited or this music makes me very sad. And people actually like listening to music for those reasons. But in reality, it just affects your mind that you're forming inner feelings based on this condition. So an ordained practitioner will totally walk away from music. And if they get to enlightenment as an ordained practitioner, they will never listen to music. As a household practitioner, you still need to train your mind to not be affected by the music itself. And what you might end up doing is you might end up going away from music for a period of time and then choosing not to listen to it. But then as your mind has eliminated any kind of craving, desire, attachment, or clinging, you can listen to music and still be enlightened. It's possible. And by that time, your mind is no longer affected by the music itself. You can still enjoy it and be like, oh, wow, that's a wonderful sound, or wow, that's great music. And you can really enjoy certain music, but you can enjoy it without a conditioned, pleasant feeling. This is what the unenlightened mind doesn't know how to do. It doesn't know how to enjoy something without getting conditioned, pleasant feelings. But that's what you'll learn how to do on your way to enlightenment. So yes, an enlightened being can listen to music and they will enjoy it, but they won't experience conditional feelings based on that music. And then what was your second question, Ihang?
Sometimes I feel the mind gets a bit more excited and then some music calms the mind down. What about this situation? Was that a right choice to do, or maybe it's not good in a long term, or what would you advise?
Yeah, long term, it's not helpful because what you need to be able to do is train your mind to internally gain its calmness and tranquility through its own faculties, its own effort. Whereas if you're relying on the music to get to the calmness, the mind hasn't produced the ability to do that by itself. And you're not going to always have the music with you because it's impermanent. So it's almost like relying on a drug or an intoxicant for some particular thing. So you would like to not use the music and try to train your mind to get to that peacefulness on its own. And that's where it's going to put in the effort, using right effort to be able to accomplish that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yusuf, you have a question, sir?
Thank you, Ihang. You asked the same question that I wanted to ask about songs. But I might add something, like I don't really understand how to differentiate between my own joy and the happiness or joy that comes from music. Like if I went to in a car right now and turn on the music, I don't know if that joy is from the music or it's already in me, inside of my mind.
Okay, so if you're turning on music and you become happy because of the music, that's a conditional feeling. Because of the music, the mind is now happy. But if you have unconditioned happiness, that means you can be happy whether you listen to the music or not, that you're not becoming happy because of the music. The mind is experiencing unconditional happiness. So what you just described is conditional happiness. And that's not what you're interested in, because that's still the mind forming its inner feelings based on some condition. And now when you get the mind up into that happiness because of the music, when the music's done, it's like, oh, I can't listen to music anymore. So the mind is going to go up and down. So you would like to learn how to listen to music without forming your inner feelings based on it. And typically what this involves is going away from music for a period of time, be it 6 months, be it a year. You're going to need to go away from music for a period of time where you're not listening to music regularly. And that's where you need to decide when's the right time for you to do that. And then as you choose to do that, your mind will notice that you'll probably be bored in some situations. You might be lonely in some situations. You might feel sad or other feelings. It's different situations. But now the mind has the ability to train itself to be able to gain its composure and its tranquility without any external devices, just internally.
It is funny that whenever you try to advise about like music or social media or some things similar, you say to distance yourself for 6 months or a year. It is hard for the mind to do that. I am not telling you anything. I don't have anything to say about this. I will do it. It's the way that the mind needs to be trained. But I just wanted to say it is funny. So I will move to my second question, or do you have anything to add?
Yeah, let me add something. So the reason why it's hard is because of the craving. If there was no craving, getting rid of music for 6 months would be like no big deal, right? Or getting rid of music for a year would be no big deal. But because there's craving, oh, this is really hard. The mind doesn't want to let go of it. And that's the whole reason why you need to let go of it. So if you told me, David, go 6 months without listening to music. Okay, no big deal. Right? There's plenty of joy there in the mind. It's not based on the music. So what you're describing is the whole reason why this is important.
Yeah. I see it weird that the Buddha didn't mention the sixth sense, which is the mind sense. It is either that he did forget or I do have a misunderstanding that you can explain. For example, when I go near a restaurant, I don't touch, see, hear, smell, or any food, which is my favorite one. It's Kentucky, but I still imagine it in my head, imagining myself eating it, smelling it, seeing it. So why didn't he mention this, the mind sense?
I suspect the reason why is because for somebody who's on the outside looking at another practitioner, like a teacher, and trying to determine whether or not you should practice generosity, you're not going to know what's inside their mind necessarily. But you can see if there's certain sounds in the environment that they're disturbed by, or certain odors or certain flavors. You can see that stuff, but you can't see what's going on in their mind based on their own thoughts. So while the sixth sense basis is something you need to learn and understand and train on your own, when it in terms of making offerings for somebody who's really far along on the path, you're only really able to observe mostly is the five senses. You can't observe their mind necessarily.
So I didn't have a misunderstanding, and I also should be interested in eliminating the sixth sense, the mind sense, right?
Yes, because remember here, this is a discourse of individuals who you would practice generosity with to produce merit. So because you can't necessarily tell the thoughts that are going on through somebody's mind and whether they're becoming discontent about those or not, the Buddha's not sharing that with you because that would be unrealistic for you to be able to have that level of insight.
Oh, yeah. Now I do understand you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, whenever there's something that you're learning about the teachings of the Buddha, you can just always assume that you don't know and you don't understand because of that ignorance, that unknowing of true reality is in there. Sometimes people get really upset or really grumpy or really irritated, and they ask me questions every once in a while, and it just comes down to them misunderstanding. So just always assume that whatever you're reading something like this or you're learning about the teachings of the Buddha, it's just a matter of asking questions and getting clarity, and I'll be able to help you. And then that way you'll have that clarity to be able to help your practice. Okay, let's see if we have questions online. I don't see any anywhere else. So let's go to the next one, which is the last one for today. Go ahead, Yihang.
Persons who are worthy of gifts. 14th discourse. So too, possessing 6 qualities. A monk is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respectful salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world. What 6? Here, a monk patiently endures forms, patiently endures sounds, patiently endures odors, patiently endures flavors, patiently endures physical objects, and patiently endures mental objects. Possessing these 6 qualities, a monk is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respectful salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world.
Okay, thank you, Yihang. So here the Buddha is including the 6th one, which is mental objects. And what a mental object would be one of the 10 fetters. So here he's talking about someone who's not enlightened, but they're close to it, that they can endure. Like, let's just say one of the mental objects is ill will and anger. So let's just say somebody's in the first or the second stage of enlightenment and their anger and frustration is starting to arise. The Buddha is saying, okay, if you observe that and they can patiently endure it, then this is somebody who you might consider to make offerings to, because they're not yet enlightened, but they're on their way to it. So this is very similar to the last discourse, but here he's including the 6th sense base, and he's helping you to be able to see in a more summarized format, where before he talked about it in more detail. So when you're reading these discourses, it's not like one discourse is going to tell you everything, because he's got to teach it in different ways and come at it from different angles. And as you understand these different things, then you can fully understand who would be wise for you to make offerings to. So let me know if you guys have any questions on any of this. Okay, Yusuf, go ahead.
I don't have a question about this topic. What about expectation? Are you interested in talking about it now or offline, or your choice?
I think it's better to talk another time, since it's not directly related to this.
Yep, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, I don't see any questions. Oh, here we go. Mayuli's asking one. Just wanted to add to the conversation. I find it hard not to overeat. Most time I set goal to eat moderately, I fail. Any suggestions would help. Yeah, so anytime you're practicing breathing mindfulness meditation and generosity, this is helping to knock down the craving. And some of these cravings are going to be around for a while. So you would like to just continue to practice the breathing mindfulness meditation and the generosity. In terms of eating in moderation, it's helpful to eat when you're not actually hungry. When you're actually hungry, you will tend to overeat. So as soon as you start feeling some hunger pain starting to come, I don't know when you're choosing to eat, but if you choose to eat at that point, rather than when you're deep into your hunger, when you're deep into your hunger, that's where you'll tend to overeat. Also, if there's a way for somebody else to control the portions, although you would like to be able to learn how to do this on your own, but when you're first getting started with this, it's really helpful for other people to manage your portions. One time I subscribed to a meal plan when I was in America, and someone else put it together, and I picked up the food every kind of 2 or 3 days or so, and I was just able to eat whatever's there on that particular meal. So this actually helps with overeating in moderation as well. So if you're able to have a meal plan or something like that, but ultimately you would like to get to the point where you're making wise choices, but just know that you need to accumulate enough of the breathing mindfulness meditation and generosity for the mind to be able to let go of certain things. And then having somebody else to monitor or manage your portions, and then eating at a time where you're not, deep into your hunger. These 3 things will help you with that one. Okay, let me see. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions anywhere. So what I'd like to do is just thank all of you guys for joining for today's class. Thank you for your interest in learning and practicing the teachings. We're coming to the end of this group learning program. As I mentioned, next week we're going to be in chapters 71 through 80. And then the very next week is the last week until we actually restart, because we'll be in chapters 81 through 89. I think this book goes to chapter 89, and we'll actually be done with the entire group learning program. It's been an entire year and a half that I started from the very beginning, went all the way through. This is the second time I've gone all the way through the entire book series. So I'll be restarting from the very beginning on July 20th. Even though you don't need to start from the beginning, it's really nice to be able to do so. So thank you all for your questions and the discussion. Thank you, Yihang, for reading as well. And perhaps we'll see you guys in the next class, which is next Saturday at 9 a.m. or 9 p.m. Thai time. Tomorrow in the group learning program, we're going to be in Volume 1, Chapter 11. This is titled Meditation, Developing Your Practice. This is where I'm going to be teaching you all the ins and outs of meditation. I'm going to be teaching you the 4 different types of meditation that the Buddha taught. And we'll be doing that tomorrow at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. Thai time at the temple in the morning and here at home in the evening. And then starting on Monday, I'm going to be starting a Foundation in the Path to Enlightenment course, which I do every month, the first full week of the month. So that'll be a Monday through Friday course from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And of course, it's recorded. If you can't make the class live, you can attend live through Zoom, Facebook, or YouTube, but you can also watch the recordings for any of the classes that you don't make. So thank you all for joining, and perhaps we'll see you guys in a future class. Have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. Take care. Sawadee-kap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.